Naomti asks, what's my least favourite playstyle of tanks? And I would have to say, apart from artillery, just because, yes, I know I play artillery and I have a tier 9 artillery and I'm trying to unlock the tier 10 but not buy the tier 10. So let's you know, try and... I know it doesn't really mitigate anything, but I'm just clinging on to that last shred of moral decency that I'm never going to buy a tier 10 arty. I would say it's tank destroyers, where you have poor mobility and poor armor and a poor traverse, and you just have to sit in a given spot and you have to camp there and you have to snipe, and that's literally all you can do. And I mean machines like the Churchill gun carrier, the Jagdtiger 8.8 particularly. I really don't like that play style because you are, I mean, you're pure fire support, you're very, very dependent on the enemy team not being particularly good, and you're also very dependent on your own team being good enough to spot for you to actually not just leave you alone to die. Because, especially if you're slow, as those machines are, you can very easily get surrounded. You don't really have much armour. Unless, you know, with the Jagdtiger 8.8, if you can go hold down somewhere, then maybe. But on open ground, you know, let's say a map like Steppes or Prokhorovka, it's very, very easy just to get flanked and to die in machines like that. So those are tank destroyers that I don't like, because I don't like their playstyle. Other people get on really well with it, but it's one of the reasons why I haven't gone down the Waffenträger line, because you have to be very cautious, very campy, because you don't have any armour to work with, and also because you've got a big gun, and that makes you a dangerous target, especially at the tier 10. They're kind of like the French autoloaders, but with none of the speed going for them, essentially. So yeah, that whole playstyle is just... I don't get on with it at all. Shadowcaster122 asks, when I first started playing World of Tanks, was there any particular tank I was trying to get? I think I mentioned that I wanted the mouse from fairly early on, but when I say fairly early on, I'm talking after a couple of thousand battles, maybe. In terms of tanks, I lost it after just a couple of hundred battles. It's got to be the AMX-40. And it was really from just browsing through the wiki and looking at the various tanks, and I saw the AMX-40 and I saw the photos and I thought, oh, well, you know, the renders, and I thought, I want that tank, I want that tank, and I got that tank, and I've had it nearly ever since. So there you go, AMX-40, no lie. I like the things I do asks, who was my favourite, or, well, who is, I guess, because I still like June a lot, who's my favourite character? And that's actually a tough question. There are so many good ones. I really like Irulan. Hazimir Fenring is a pretty minor character, but I still really like him. Peter de Vries has his moments. It's funny, the Atreides are the heroes, and I wouldn't really count them among any of my favourite characters, but on the other hand, when you get to Leto II, the God Emperor, he has some very, very interesting moments in the book God Emperor of Dune. So yeah, and then actually there's another character in God Emperor of Dune who I don't think we ever actually like see him face to face in the book, as it were, but is it Uncle Malky? Like the Machiavellian mind behind some of the scheming that goes on in that book. It's something like that, Uncle Malky, I can't remember exactly, but he's like the most interesting character that you never meet in the whole series. And then of course there's Duncan Idaho, and when we meet him in Dune, he's not that interesting, he's just one of the kind of the background characters. He gets some stuff to do, but later on he gets much more of a main role. And honestly, a God Emperor of Dune could quite easily have been called They Keep Killing Duncan Idaho. So yeah, maybe that'll be an album name for my band someday, if I ever have a band. It'll be, you know, that. I think, what was it? I came up with one a while ago. It was actually one of the videos I posted while I was away from the archives thing. Hot Combat Situation, that was it. Hot Combat Situation is going to be the first album, and then They Keep Killing Duncan Idaho is going to be the second album. So there you go. We've got all planned out, you guys. Bogerly Watt asks, if I was the supreme ruler of a new country, what would my first law be? What would I name my country? And lastly, who would take over the throne if I was to be murdered? Well, obviously, my very first act would be to declare Caption Guy an enemy of the state. I mean, that goes without saying. He would be... I have no doubt that even if I didn't do that, he would be working against me. He would be in the shadows. He would be fomenting unrest, rebellion, saying nasty things about me, you know, on... He'd probably hack into the official broadcasts and say, you know, things about me on screen, because he has his ways. As to what I would name my country, I don't actually know. KV4ia. There you go. That's what it'd be called. And who would take over the throne? Well, if there's going to be any kind of, you know, you specifically say murdered, you know, assassinated, so if that happens, it's going to be Caption Guy, isn't it? He's going to be the one that pulled the trigger, and he's going to be the one that takes the throne afterwards, so I have no doubt that he would be behind the whole thing. And just to say, you know, in advance, if you think my rule was mean and dictatorial and just generally evil, you've seen nothing. Just you wait till Caption Guy gets the reins of power, and then you see how bad things will get. So, you know, just bear that in mind before you decide to join his plot against me. Just, you know, things could be worse. You could have Caption Guy in charge. So, yes. This is not really a question, but I think I mentioned something about hair last time. Kurdiacha Man, he kind of mentions that, and you know what? I actually did get a haircut. That side. I had about 4 inches chopped off, so off my hair, I hasten to add. Yes, Caption Guy, I know how your brain works. Just for the wedding, really, more than anything else. But I mean, it's still long enough, I guess. But yeah, it was getting a bit unruly, a bit scraggly. So split ends were becoming a thing, and there's nothing worse than a split end, let me tell you. Oh dear, oh dear. But yes, apparently my mojo is intact. So yeah, there you go. We're also back to books with Golem Watt, who says if I could... oh wait, no, he's not really asking a question, he's just saying if he could only pick a single book, he'd go for Good Omens. Well, there you go, I was totally misreading that. Yes, Good Omens was very good. I recommend that. That was an interesting novel. An interesting fusion between the two, because you had... A lot of the writing was more kind of Pratchett's writing, I think, but a lot of the ideas that were coming in were... From Gaiman were very, very interesting indeed. So yeah, good choice, sir. Good choice. IVICMP asks, have I ever thought about coming to Hawaii just for a visit, for a holiday, to live there? I think living there would be problematic. I don't want to think about what the ping would be for World of Tanks from Hawaii, but going there on holiday would be nice. Actually, and I've mentioned the wedding already, that's where my stepbrother and his new wife are. They're going on their honeymoon. I almost said honeymoon there. That makes no sense. That's not a word, but I was trying to say it anyway. They're going on their honeymoon to Hawaii, but they're actually going basically during winter because they don't have time right now. They're both really busy with other things, so they're taking a winter break in somewhere with a bit of sunshine, which I think is always a jolly good idea. It's not something I generally get a chance of doing, but you know, Hawaii, there you go. I think it would be interesting to visit. It seems like a really lovely place. Doubtless I could take many nice photographs there. Probably not enjoying the beaches so much. I mean, we have nice beaches here. I'd probably be stomping around the beaches of Hawaii wearing a pair of Wellingtons just because, you know, I really don't like sand in my shoes. But yeah, no, I would like to someday. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but there's plenty of places in the Pacific that I mean, I mentioned this totally randomly, but Vanuatu is another place I'd really like to go. But I don't even know if you could play World of Tanks from Vanuatu. That would be yes. And the reason I mentioned Vanuatu is because in ye olden days, and I say ye olden days, it's actually about 30 years ago, it was known as the New Hebrides. So there you go. There's some connection there. But having you know read up a bit about it, it looks like a really lovely place as well. So you know, there are plenty of really nice islands in the Pacific that could be worth visiting. I like islands. I don't know why. Maybe living on one has coloured my view somewhat. Luke Anderson asks, no love for non-fiction? I occasionally dip into non-fiction. I occasionally very occasionally read things like biographies and stuff. But no, most of my reading is, I have to say, probably fiction. The vast majority of the non-fiction books on my shelf are to do with photography in various ways. Photo books are very bad. They're like, I was going to say like candy, but they're probably more like crack cocaine. You can never have too many photo books, and it's knowing where to stop that's the hard thing. So yeah, I've got some very interesting books on the early history of photography, and I've got, I think, a couple of big National Geographic tabletop books, and yeah, it's just one of those things. But I've read some interesting ones. I read a very interesting one about the history of Scotland from a kind of Highlands perspective, and one about the history of hydroelectric power in Scotland, which actually does have a very interesting history. I read a couple of years ago, I read a very interesting history of Benjamin Disraeli, who was an awfully interesting chap. Now he was an interesting guy. He had a very dissolute youth and ended up being Prime Minister, so you know. But he was a very modern politician in some ways. He's a very interesting bloke. I'm trying to think of any other particular ones that stand out for me. I think I've read some interesting books on biography on Isambard Kingdom Brunel. That was quite a while ago, but that was very interesting. Again, another really interesting guy. His father was also a really interesting guy, so you know, interesting family all round, I guess. I can't really think of any others, but you know, I do occasionally read non-fiction. It's just the vast majority of my books are actually, you know, fiction and science fiction as it happens, because, you know, bit of a nerd. But anyway, Miodrag Mijatovic asks which Star Trek series and which film is my favourite, and apparently I've pronounced his name very well last time round. Let's hope I pronounced it well this time round. Series, probably the original, just for the fun factor. It has some real duffers of episodes, but I mean, it's Captain Kirk and Spock and Bones and Scotty and Uhura and Sulu and Chekhov, and you can't beat that. You really can't. And as for the films, possibly number 6. I mean, it had some derpy things, but as a goodbye to the original cast, I think it was really good, and it had some very good moments. It had some really tense action. We got to see Captain Sulu in action. We had Christopher Plummer quoting Shakespeare. I mean, it just had it all, really. It was really, really good. A lot of people possibly expect me to say Wrath of Khan. You know, Wrath of Khan's good. And I actually have a soft spot for the third one, Search for Spock, which is, I feel, a bit underrated. But no, I would have to say number 6, The Undiscovered Country. The score, not quite as fantastic as the score for Wrath of Khan, with a blaster beam blaring away in the background. That's one of my favourite scores, is for the Wrath of Khan. But as for the actual film, I would say number 6. HSM English asks, can I say something in the local dialect? I guess you mean Scots Gaelic. No is the quick answer, but actually, when you say local, there's an interesting thing in that there are actually varieties of Gaelic, even within Scotland. Even though the speakers of Gaelic were probably talking a couple of tens of thousands of people in Scotland as a whole, and it's you know, there's a slow revival. The decline, there was a very steep decline for possibly like the whole of the 20th century, basically. Up until about the 50s, I think it was relatively stable, and then after that it started to really quite steeply decline. But it's stabilised a lot now, partly thanks to Scottish government funding. You know, this I am fond of repeating, and this actually comes from that book I was mentioning earlier, the Scottish History from a Highlands Perspective. That we live under the first Scottish Parliament in history that's not, you know, the first Scottish government in history that's not actively trying to destroy the Gaelic language, because that was true for hundreds and hundreds of years. They were actively trying to replace Gaelic. They were trying to stamp it out and replace it with Scots. But Scots itself was then replaced with English, which just, you know, steadily displaced Scots. And Scots not really spoken natively by anyone anymore, but Gaelic still is. But yeah, there are actually differences in the Gaelic spoken natively here, in Harris, in Skye. I think in the US have got their own kind of slight dialects of Gaelic. So yeah, it's actually even in a language that has, you know, a couple of tens of thousands of speakers left. there are actually still a couple of distinct dialects, and you can apparently, if you're a speaker, you can tell where somebody learned their Gaelic or grew up, basically based on their Gaelic. So I find that really interesting. But no, I can't speak a word of it. When I actually arrived here at school, it was in my second year of secondary, and you start doing Gaelic here in primary school, and then you get to secondary, and you basically then decide if you want to keep doing it or not. I arrived here from the mainland, never having done a day of sat in a day of Gaelic class in my life, and was thrust into, you know, second year of secondary Gaelic, and obviously I hadn't got a clue. So that whole year was basically a free pass for me. I had like an hour or 2 hours a week where I didn't have to do anything, because I hadn't a clue, and there was no way I was going to catch up with everyone else. So they tried teaching me some very, very basic, you know, like how to say hello and goodbye and that kind of thing, but it just never stuck, unfortunately. I don't have a facility for languages, unlike Billy over at Cirque 4, who is really annoying in that regard. He's very, very good at languages. He's one of those people that can just pick them up. Well, not just pick them up, you know, I expect he has to work at it, but he's got a facility for it. And I think that's a really, really nice skill if you've got it, if your brain works that way, because bilingualism is a really good thing. Even if you only speak 2 languages, it's one of these things that it's I'm fairly certain I'm right in saying that neuroscientists have shown that it's a good thing for the brain. And also it's interesting that, you know, I know people that are bilingual. Obviously all the people I know from other countries that speak English, you know, Circon, Fosh, Snooze, just all the other people I've met over the years, that they grow up with English, and, you know, having another language is really useful. But it's also interesting hearing them talking about, you know, well, they might think in one language, but sometimes they think in the other language, and that can have an effect on how you even think about things, because there are some really interesting things with different languages. Different languages have different, and, you know, it's not really the case for English, but Spanish definitely does. I'm trying to think of French, or is it German? But they have basically gendered nouns, and it actually changes the way you think about things. Like the one language might have a male noun for you know, a bridge or something like that, and so they tend to associate masculine characteristics, whereas with whatever that object is. But another language might have a female noun for that, and they tend to associate feminine characteristics. And it's all really interesting, but I just have no facility for languages. I don't even remember any of the French I did at school, and that was what, 4 or 5 years of French, and none of it stuck. I couldn't. It would go in one ear, and I'd learn by rote, you know, the list of whatever it was I was trying to learn on a given day, and then they would do the test, and I'd go, okay, you know, I know this, I know this, and then we'd move on to the next thing, and the thing I'd just learned would just go boop right out the other side. So it just never stuck, unfortunately. And it would be nice to have another language. It would be nice to have Gaelic, but my brain doesn't, you know, it doesn't want to take the information in. So I don't know. But yeah, there you go. That was a longer answer than I was thinking of giving, but now you know. And last question, the final question, and we're back to books again. This is from Captain Trips, who says, clearly you're a Discworld fan. One of my favourite things about the series is how Ankh-Morpork has gotten bigger and fuller with each book, and characters often have little cameos in other characters' books. I'll not ask you your favourite characters, that would be too cruel. Well, I don't know, somebody already asked me my favourite Dune character, and I couldn't even give a proper answer to that, but, you know, I gave a range of answers. But what my favourite group, the Wizards, Assassins, Postal Workers, okay, that's an interesting, yeah, because the books do kind of come in in the first half of the novels he wrote. We had a lot of novels around the witches, and I really like them, some of them, but we've had more based on Ankh-Morpork, and I really like some of them, and the City Watch. That's a really tough question. Even so, that is a really tough question. I have to say, maybe not the witches so much, but the books based around Lanka and the Ramtops, I think I count some of those among my favourites. But there are some very good ones set in Ankh-Morpork. There are some very good ones that have been kind of almost standalone. What's the one where it follows the young lady that joins the army and pretends to be a man? That's based on, you know, several real life instances of women that did join the army and cross-dress and pretended to be men and, you know, were soldiers. I'll have to look that up, but I'll put it on screen, or Caption Guy will remember for me, because, you know, he's occasionally useful, I suppose. Mostly he's just a jerk, but occasionally he has his uses. But I would say the wizards kind of, but I really enjoy when he does. Not the wizards, the witches. But I really enjoy it when he does take a look at a different geographical location, like when we've had novels going to places like the Counterweight Continent, or novels looking at places like a Jelly Baby, which is the best name for everywhere, for a place anywhere on the disc is Jelly Baby. Yes, it's a nation loosely based on ancient Egypt, and it's a civilization that depends on the you know, this big long river called the Gel, and Jelly Baby translated means the child of the Gel. Yes, but yeah, no, I like books that are set places in different places. I mean, we've had one or two that have visited Ubervold, and I've really enjoyed those. So yeah, I hope he does some more that are set in different areas of the disc, because there's still a lot of the disc we've never seen. There are still a lot of interesting places out there. So that was a good last question, and I think we'll wrap things up there. I've been talking nearly an hour. I'll probably edit it down to a bit less than that, but yeah, these always end up being longer than I think they will be. So as I said at the top of the video, if you have a question for the next one, ask beneath and say question. If you've got any other comments, you can leave them below. You can hit the like button, you can subscribe to my channel, and as always, stay tuned for more.